Brilliance Audio.
Into the Sound by Cara Reinard. Performed by Kirsten Potter. The most dangerous of all falsehoods is a slightly distorted truth. Georg Christoph Lichtenberg. She straightened the emergency supplies she'd picked up at the store, adding them to the storm kit. 4 gallons of distilled water, about a dozen flashlights, batteries in all shapes and sizes, candles, matches, canned goods, 1 battery-powered NOAA weather radio, and, of course, the bottle of vodka she stashed under the sink behind the floor cleaner. There was no way Holly would survive a storm stuck in the house with her husband and 2 children without it. Mark rarely tolerated her drinking because of her family history, but if the power went out, his nerves would force him to focus on other things, besides the slip of clear she'd sneak into her coffee cup. "Did you make sure they aren't the matches you got last time?" Mark asked. "Those snapped in half as soon as I tried to strike 'em." Her husband paced the laminate floors made to look like wood. Holly secretly wished their house would flood just a touch from the storm. Not so much that the rainwater reached the stairs, just the floors, so she could buy new, real hardwood. "Yes, they're Penleys, the long ones. We only had leftover matches from a restaurant last time, and I think they'd gotten wet." Holly took the new box of matches and slid off the cardboard top so Mark could see the contents. His eyes ignited with the promise of all the fires he could light for days with those matches. Just one more boy in the house she had to placate. "Yes, Otto, you can participate in the Speedway Demolition Derby at 16, if you're still interested. Fast cars and destruction can be all yours in 6 short years." Tyler was the easiest one. At 7 years old, staying up an extra half-hour past bedtime was a thrill. "A wet matchbook to fight Sandy. That was our first mistake." Mark frowned at the mention of the monster storm that had taken out much of Long Island several years ago. After reading an article about flooding and electrical shocks, he'd made them unplug everything that wasn't necessary for survival. Fortunately, their town hadn't been decimated like Long Beach. Sayville was a coastal town, but their house was inland. "You know they're calling this one another superstorm." Mark began the ritualistic process of clicking on and off each flashlight to make sure it still worked. "Well, at least we're prepared this time." The news made everything sound worse than it was, but it would only give Mark more anxiety if she told him that she'd been following the anticipated surge patterns, and they didn't appear to be nearly as large as the last storms. It was best to say as little as possible when he was in one of his states. "He only wants to protect your family," her sister said whenever Holly tried to complain about how overbearing Mark could be. And how could Holly possibly be upset by that? Vivian's husband was much less attentive, but sometimes Holly thought that was preferable. An alert sounded on the television with the same warnings that had already been scrolling across the bottom for hours. "Oh, wow," Mark said. Holly refrained from rolling her eyes and thought about how good that first sip of vodka was going to taste when she could finally drink it. "Did you get dinner? The boys already ate grilled chicken and cheesy potatoes," she offered. Holly moved toward the refrigerator to fix him a plate. But Mark was standing in the living room, face inches from the TV screen. "No, I don't want to eat now. Let's see what this thing does first. How can you think about food?" he asked. Logic would have it that he might want to heat up dinner while they still had electricity, but logic didn't live in their house right now. "Are you still subscribing to that pre-made meal company?" Mark asked, with his back turned to her. He'd applauded her new meal choices until he'd learned they were someone else's ideas. "Yes?" She rinsed a plate and put it in the dishwasher. He grumbled. "Because going to the store is such a struggle, we have to pay someone to do it for us? You want healthy meals during the week, that comes at a price.